Penawdau pawb.
Penawdau pawb.
Penawdau. So it has just turned 2 o'clock. So Penawdau pawb. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the executive panel. Can I especially welcome to our meeting Mr. Dan Stevens, the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor Government, who will be presenting item number 5. So we'll start with item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies. Lisa, do we have any apologies for today's meeting, please?
Yes, we do. Sorry, Councillor Alan Hughes, Councillor Paul Rogers, ACFO Justin Evans and Elgam Roberts. I understand ACFO MacArthur's picking up the pay policy.
Excellent, diolch yn fawr. So item number 2 is declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interests from anybody? I can't see any hands being raised. So we'll go on to item number 3, which is notice of urgent matters. I haven't received any notification of urgent matters. So we'll go on to item number 4, which is the minutes of the last meeting held on the 15th of December. So we'll just take those in terms of accuracy to begin with. So page number 1, page number 2, page number 3, page number 4, and page number 5. I can't see any hands being raised in terms of any corrections. Can I have somebody to propose that we accept the minutes, please? Thank you, Mark. And the seconder, please. Thank you, Paul. So will you all show that you agree with the accurate record? Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you to Lisa again for her excellent work in preparing the minutes. Just a couple of matters to update you on. First of all, item 4.2 from the last meeting in relation to, we said that the Cabinet Secretary would be making a statement regarding future governance arrangements for fire and rescue authorities. You will have seen the copy of the letter that's come out with the proposed combination order in relation to those changes, which will come into effect at the end of this month. It means that not this May, but a year next May after the elections, there will be a new Fire and Rescue Authority North Wales, which will be constituted of 1 executive panel member from each local authority and 3 independently appointed additional members, making a total of 9. So that's the way that the wind is blowing, just for information. Also, in relation to the minutes of the last meeting, item number 8 regarding the new national framework. Chief, did you want to come in to just say a comment about that, please? Thank you.
Yes, at the last meeting, we approved the consultation response that went to Welsh Government. The Welsh Government took that into consideration along with all the other responses, and they have now completed and published the national framework for the fire and rescue services in Wales, and that comes into effect at the end of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And just for information, we're ahead of the game compared to England because they haven't started their consultation process in relation to their new national framework yet. So I don't think there's any other matters that needed to be updated from the minutes of the last meeting. So we go on to item number 5 now, and it's over to Dan for the presentation of his report and to looking at the control rooms. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Chair. If members are ready, I will speak very briefly to the report. So the inspection of the Welsh fire controls was requested by ministers in response to recommendation 31 of the Grenfell Tower Inquiry Phase 2 report. The inspection report was published on the 18th of December of last year, and it consisted of 3 sections. Section 1 was a generic description of fire control and the challenges faced by the control management teams, specifically in relation to staffing, training, and the management of fatigue and risk. Section 2 set out the findings of the inspection insofar as they applied to the joint fire control at Bridgend. So that's the fire control which provides the service for South and Mid and West Wales. And Section 3 sets out the findings of the inspection insofar as they applied to the North Wales Fire Control, which is located within the Joint Communications Centre at St Asaph, which, as you'll be aware, is adjacent to the headquarters. So it's Section 3 that I'll speak to today, and that's at pages 28 through 39 of the inspection report for your reference. Pages 28 to 30 contain a description of the North Wales Fire Control, an explanation as to how it's structured and how firefighters control undertake initial and ongoing training. Pages 30 to 37 set out the issues that were raised during the inspection around the specific focus areas, which looked at the integration of fire control within the service, training for fire control, policy development and operational assurance specific to fire control. And pages 37 to 38 set out a summary of those issues, which is probably your best point of reference. So in respect of integration, the fire control staff said that they did feel integrated within the service, and they recognised the efforts of the control management team and the chief fire officer in that regard, and specifically the amount of effort that had been expended to ensure that that integration was as fulsome as it could be. They did say that they felt there was more work to do, but when I pressed on that, they were non-specific as to exactly what that might look like, what more it might be that the chief and the control management team could do to improve that sense of integration. Although there were some isolated comments there, which I'll pick up on very briefly. What I would say is, and I appreciate I'm not speaking to Section 2, which looked at the joint fire control and Bridgend, but what I will say is, members, is that the concerns that were raised by staff in joint fire control, particularly over being located within a police facility, they were absolutely not replicated by your staff within the North Wales Fire Control. So the issue of fatigue arising from the long night shift, that was raised, that is a cause for concern, and there was issues raised there about the rest facilities. So the rest facilities in the joint fire in the JCC, they're not the same standard as what you would see on fire stations, and rest periods are not as long. That's simply a fact of the way in which the operation of the fire control runs. Staffing levels were raised as being an issue, although it was recognised that the recruitment of 4 temporary staff to bring the staffing levels across the 4 watches up to 28 full-time equivalent has had a positive impact. It was recognised that there'd clearly been an investment in time and effort from the control management team to improve the operational assurance processes for fire control, but it was acknowledged broadly and particularly by the control management team that there were some policy gaps that remained. I would describe that as a developing process, but the direction of travel is definitely good, and it's certainly what we would be. It's certainly what I would be expecting to be seeing. I think the final point to make is that certainly this was my observation, that fire control staff, they should have confidence in the mechanisms through which they can make suggestions for improvement. And I think for the most part, they do. The control management team are clearly committed to progressing their suggestions. However, it is a fact that implementation for entirely legitimate organisational reasons is not always within their control. The point I make in the report is that should not be a barrier to engagement from fire control. And in fairness, I actually don't think that it is, despite some of the comments that might have been made. But I do think that expectation, or rather consideration, should be given around expectation management. And that would be typically through regular updates on progress or otherwise, because going back to the point I made earlier, there are some issues that are raised that either are not within the gift of fire control management to resolve, or actually organisationally may not be appropriate to address in the way necessarily that the fire control staff may wish to see it being addressed. I made 3 recommendations, and they're set out on page 39, along with the short rationale for each of them. Recommendation 1 is that the service should ensure that their shift durations do not exceed 12 hours. So this is to address the fatigue issue. Your current night shift durations of 14 hours exceed the guidance set out within HSG 256. And the reason for that is because it doesn't allow sufficient rest in between the night shifts. And as I mentioned previously, the ability for fire control staff to take meaningful rest during the shift is limited by the existing accommodation provision, and also there is the likelihood that they might get recalled during the rest period. That does cause some issues there, because you are legally required to have suitable and sufficient risk assessments to address issues such as fatigue. And as it stands, there isn't actually any practical proactive control measure that you could reasonably employ to mitigate against that, simply because the disruption to the rest period would have happened, and then they'd be going off duty, and then they haven't got that, there isn't that 12-hour period in between the first and the second night shift. And clearly extended rest periods impact on the amount of time that's then available for on-shift training, and that's equally the case for your shift stations at Wrexham, Deeside and Rhyl. Recommendation 2 is that the service should increase the fire control establishment across the watches to 28 full-time equivalents. It's my understanding that that's been agreed within the budget for 26-27, so that's definitely something I would be supportive of. That's clearly a good thing. Recommendation 3 is that the service should undertake an in-depth analysis of operational demand and fire control staff training and development needs, with a view to increasing staffing levels on day shifts, because clearly that's when you're going to be able to deliver the greater proportion of the training, and actually you've got more operational capacity to do that because the demand levels are less during the day, certainly during the early part of the day shift. And that would then create that opportunity for better quality training and development. I understand that might be problematic to deliver because there potentially is a cost to doing that, which would add to your budget pressures. However, I do think it is it's certainly worth exploring the possibility to see whether that is feasible. I'll pause at that point, Chair, to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you very much, Dan, and can I thank you also for this very comprehensive report, which gives us a clear direction of travel. And obviously from the recommendations, there are some things that we can take on board that will help us to even better improve the quality of our service. But the report certainly does read positively. And I think I need to sort of highlight to members the penultimate paragraph before the recommendations, which reads, in summary, I have no reason to doubt that the North Wales Fire Rescue Fire Control delivers its core functions effectively. I have also no reason to doubt the professionalism and competence of the staff. To the contrary, the attitude and commitment of all the North Wales FRS Fire Control staff I met with was exemplary. And I noticed that the Fire Control Manager, Ross Thomas, is with us today, and I'd just like to sort of express our thanks on behalf of the authority for the excellent work that you and your team are doing, Ross. So, diolch yn fawr, thank you for that. So I'm going to open it up for comments and questions. Mark Young, Mark, you've got your hand up first. Diolch.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr. Thank you for that, and thank you, Dan. Good report, and as the chair says, some positives. But I have got a confirmation question just to confirm what I'm taking from the report, etc. So can you confirm with regard to North Wales Fire Authority that the recommendations from the inspection are about strengthening resilience and training capacity rather than addressing any existing operational failure or failures, please? Can you just touch on that, please, Dan? So from an assurance that we can be absolutely clear, but thanks for the report, Jochen.
Yeah, fundamentally, if you look at recommendation 3, councillor, that's the driver for that is to give fire control, the fire control management team, the training officer particularly, the best opportunity to deliver quality training during the time at which the training officer is rostered in for duty, which is during the day shift. So the operational activity is lower during the day. And if you have more people on duty during the day, clearly then it is easier then for the training officer to access those people, to deliver training to them, because they effectively have to be abstracted out of the control room into the training room, because it just simply wouldn't be practical to try to deliver training whilst the firefighters' control remained at their stations on the X. Essentially, it just simply wouldn't be practical. Earlier on in the section 1 of the report, I draw the distinction between the fire station, where the crew can go out onto the yard and train together because they can be alerted via the station tannoy. Whereas in fire control, you just simply can't do that. It's simply impractical because of the operational nature of the way that the fire control has to function. So that is the rationale and the driver for that recommendation.
Okay, thanks for that, and a good report, and thanks for your work in that confirmation, Jochen. Thank you.
Mark, are there any other questions or comments from members, please? I can't see any hands being raised, so in that case, we'll move on to the recommendations for ourselves, which is number 1, that we note the contents of the report, and number 2, also note that an action plan has been put in place to consider the recommendations arising from the report. Can I have somebody to propose, please? Thank you, Mark. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Gareth. Will you show that you all agree with the recommendations, please? Diolch yn fawr. So thank you again, Dan, for coming to be present with us today and presenting your report, and we'll certainly be moving forward with that. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you. So we'll go on to item number 6 now, which is the performance monitoring Q3 report for this year. And I think it's ACFO Anthony Jones who's presenting this. Diolch yn fawr, Ant.
Diolch, Pnawn da, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, the performance monitoring report is presented to members today to deliver to you the performance for the first 3 quarters of the financial year 25-26. And this performance measures reflect the 5 key principles outlined within our community risk management planning. So in summary, compared to the same period of 24-25, fire incidents have increased. And this represents an overall increase of 35%. And secondary fires is the predominant cause of those increases. And this reflects the dry weather conditions that we experienced earlier in the year, with fires in the open driving this increase. In relation to accidental dwelling fires, we have seen an increase of 6.5% compared to the same period of last year, and that's resulted in a total of 246 incidents attended. Attendance of special service calls has shown a reduction from last year. However, the number of road traffic collisions that we've attended has risen. Work continues to support our communities with a total of 14,935 self and well checks completed during the period, although that is a slight decrease in volume compared to 24-25. The focus remains on our medium and high priority visits. And in addition, North Wales Fire and Rescue Service remains committed to education through our school visits and the provision of our Phoenix courses and those individual interventions to address fire setting. So I won't go through the full body of the report, but I'm very happy to take questions and the recommendation is that you note the content of the performance monitoring report. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ant. And as you said, there's a wealth of information contained in the report. So I'm going to open it up to members for comments and questions, please. Over to you again, please, Mark. Diolch.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Yeah, yes, thank you. Good report. The trends are clear, and so if you can confirm that the trends do impact how you assess your plans and alter, etc., and also partnership working. Yeah, it's mentioned in there, but a bit more confirmation of how that would look like moving forward, please, Anthony. But a good report, thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, obviously the performance and data team do exactly as you asked there around monitoring, looking for trends. Clearly, we've been at this level of reporting now for a number of years, so we've got good data to support our overall picture in relation to how trends are either increasing or decreasing. We also are in tune with a number of national work streams through the National Fire Chiefs Council and All Wales Working. So we do actively look for trends, and obviously that's data dependent. We don't react on single quarters, but when we certainly get building trends, and we do indeed. In relation to partnership working, obviously we have in our prevention teams across the North Wales area, we have dedicated partnership managers working in those teams. They work with their local communities. They have deep understanding of the risks and challenges in their communities, and they head up and manage those in the west, the central, and the eastern functions. And a broader, wider partnership working, myself and my colleagues sit on the public service boards that sit across North Wales, and those are sort of true indicators of that more strategic partnership working, where we help partners and partners help us. So it is a core function of the Fire and Rescue Service that you'll be aware of, but also we have that duty under the Future Wellbeing and Future Generations Act to ensure that we work in collaboration and partnership. So it is very much on our agenda.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Anthony.
You're welcome.
Just before I bring in Councillor Paul Cullinan for his question, whilst we're talking about trends, there is in the report reference to emergency technologies. Now, I know that we have sort of data now available in terms of the increase in wildfires, the increase in flooding, but certainly in the future there's going to be more and more fires caused by emerging technologies. And it notes in the report about one for solar panels, one for electric scooter, one for lithium batteries, and one for charging. Are we happy that we have actually got the right recording mechanisms in place to be able to monitor trends in this area?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so members will be aware, it's probably about 12-18 months ago now that we added this section to the performance monitoring report, because we were palpably feeling across North Wales that we were going to more of these incidents. You'll have seen them highlighted within our community risk management planning as an emerging trend, and you're 100% right. We're going to incidents now. 5 or 10 years ago we weren't going to. So we built that into the performance monitoring. What's been happening recently on a national level is and Ros and her team, when we have incidents, they've been using a legacy system, the incident recording system, which because it was designed prior to this emergence, didn't have the categories of risk that we're now facing. So a national piece of work, and this is UK, not Wales, in relation to the creating of a fire and rescue data platform. So it's a new data platform that records incidents, and our teams, Ros's teams, and members of our performance team have been heavily involved from a perspective of supporting the development of that on a national basis, and they've included far more incident criteria and far more areas that the control teams, when they're closing these incidents, can try and accurately pinpoint the nature of the incident, such as charging e-bikes, So, and we're in the final rollout phase of that new platform now. So we are still in that rollout phase, but we hope that once that final phase of the rollout of that national work is completed, that we'll be able to get a far truer and more accurate picture. Because at the moment we have to trawl through incidents and looking for the words as opposed to them being readily available. So it is very much on our radar and an area of focus as we see the risks in these areas emerge, and therefore how we respond in relation to prevention primarily, but also in response.
So just to clarify, Ant, when we have that sort of recording mechanism in place, it may well be that sort of there'll be a lot more incidents shown, but because it's the effectiveness of the recording, perhaps more than actually more incidents?
Potentially, yes. And I think once we've allowed that system to embed, we may well base our reporting on the categories within there, so we can really be as accurate as we can be.
Thank you. Apologies, Chief, you got your hand up.
This is just picking up the question around partnership working, just to let members know that before the next Fire Authority meeting, we're going to have a presentation around our prevention work, and that will go into much more detail about the partnership working that we currently do. And the reason why it's so important that we look at the trends and the way that the activity and risk in North Wales is developing. So you're quite right to highlight, we need to be tracking the incidents that occur through technology, adapted technology. That is because when we are now going to produce our next community risk management plan, and I know Anthony's team are already thinking about that. The national framework insists now that we take all this data and that we devise, and it is the duty of the Fire Authority to approve that our resources are in the appropriate place to meet these new and emerging risks. So again, it's a snapshot in time for members now, but this will build the picture which will go into our future community risk management plan, and may mean that we will need to change resources here in North Wales.
Thank you for that, Chief. Councillor Paul Cunningham. Paul?
Joel Cadeirydd. I'm just going back to the partnership working, Chair. I would like to say that the North Wales Fire Authority work well with the area of outstanding natural beauty. I know they have regular exercises, particularly around the Moel Famau area of Denbighshire, and the AONB covers mostly Denbighshire, a little part of Flintshire, and other parts of North Wales. But we do have a good working relationship with the AONB and the North Wales Fire Authority, and I hope it carries on, Chair. Diolch yn fawr.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for highlighting that good practice. Councillor Anthony Wren. Anthony?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Considering we've just been through the budget process for 26-27 and weren't perhaps aware of these increasing trends, do we think we're appropriately funded this year to cope with them? Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor, in relation to the emerging technologies, just to clarify.
No, just the general increase in fires attended, especially wildfires and things like that. The fact that they are heavily resource intensive. Have we set the budget at the appropriate levels to cope with these increases?
Good question. I think the Chief wants to come in. Thank you, Chief.
I could ask Helen to answer this, but I think what we're trying to do is to set a budget which will enable us to have resources for an average year, but bear in mind that we know that these trends are increasing, and that will be part of the communication that we will have with our constituent councils when it comes to the following year's budget and in each subsequent year. Because as these activities do increase, you're quite right, Councillor Wren, it takes a lot more resources and a lot more time, and therefore the costs will increase. But for next year, we are content with the budget that we've set. Thank you.
But yeah, good question, Anthony, because historically we were only getting data on the number of wildfire incidents, but now we get data on the amount of days that it takes to deal with these wildfire incidents, so we get a better picture of how resource intensive it is. Any other questions or comments from members, please? I can't see any hands being raised, so the recommendation is just that we note the contents of the report. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Gareth Roberts. Thank you, Paul Cunningham. You show that we agree. Diolch yn fawr. So we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Community Risk Management Implementation Plan for 2026-27. And it's over to you again, please, Ant.
Diolch, thank you. Yes. So the purpose of this report is to provide members with an overview of the public consultation on the Community Risk Management Implementation Plan for 26-27. And seek approval for that document to be implemented. Firstly, I must apologise. The report does highlight that should have received a summary report and the equality impact assessment. I think those are quite detailed documents, and I think they're still in the translation phase, but they will be presented to you as full file authority for endorsement at the next meeting. But going back to the Community Risk Management Implementation Plan, this process that we've established now, we're in our third year, supports the authority in a number of the legislative responsibilities. So under the Welsh Government Fire and Rescue National Framework of 2016, it's one of the key objectives of fire and rescue services in Wales to continually, sustainably reduce risk. Under the Local Government Measure, Wales 2009, the authority is required to make arrangements for continuous improvement in the exercising of its function and set itself improvement objectives. It is a statutory requirement of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act 2015 for public bodies to publish annual wellbeing objectives. And the Welsh Government Fire and Rescue Circular of 2024 confirms the duties under the measure and the Act, and that we can discharge those in a single document. And that's what we do with our Community Risk Management Implementation Plan. This is the third Community Risk Management Implementation Plan of our overarching 5-year Community Risk Management Plan, 24-29. And this CRMIP aims to identify those risks facing the communities and describes how we as the authority, as yourselves as the authority, will manage those risks and to continue to prevent and respond to fires and other emergencies. And those objectives that have been written within this within this document are there to accept or to manage the requirements of the aforementioned pieces of legislation. In relation to the consultation, we've seen a growing increase in our consultation responses, and this has increased by 42% compared to the previous year, which is a real positive for us. It shows that we're maturing in how we are consulting with the public and trying our best to find those hard to reach communities. Support for our proposed objectives was consistently high, between 93 and 97% across all of our five principles. And following the consultation, heads of department were given the verbatim and detailed comments received from the public and staff, and they then assessed those against the planned objectives and to form the final version. But also equally important, our trade union colleagues were actively engaged as part of our social partnership duty through our joint consultation negotiation committee, where consensus was reached. And as with previous years, the authority will report against the progress of this new Community Risk Management Implementation Plan in the annual performance assessment of 2027. So what I'd like to recommend is members to approve the attached Community Risk Management Plan for 2026-27.
Thank you, Ant. Are there any questions or comments for members, please? Ant, if I kick off, so you refer to the fact that it's about identifying the risks that we face and managing those risks. So last week with ACFO Hannah MacArthur, I attended the LGA Fire and Rescue Conference in Manchester, And one of sort of the key areas, key challenges that were highlighted was developing sufficient civil resilience. And sort of, there's very little reference to that in the plan. So going forward, is that something that you would expect us to be addressing and taking on board?
Yeah, thank you. Most definitely, and it is. I'm currently the vice chair of the Local Resilience Forum for North Wales, and as you'd imagine, that forum, which works under the Civil Contingents Act, is very much that there's a gaining momentum of the need to support communities in their civil resilience, how communities can support themselves in time of crisis, and yes, it will certainly be part of our planning of how we support. How we can support communities to prepare as best they can. And a further example of this is, was part of the Public Service Board work, we are developing a Pan North Wales climate change risk assessment, and that's very much focused on supporting those communities that will be at risk from climate change, but actually how we help them prepare, and how we as public bodies, but also how we as the communities can prepare for what might come future in the climate change world. So that the mood music or the emphasis around civil resilience is certainly growing, and yes, it will most definitely be part of our community risk management implementation planning in future years, and I would imagine it will be weaved very much through our next long-term plan, the overarching plan above it.
Diolch. Chief, do you want to come in? Thank you.
Well, I believe, Chair, that you had a presentation at that conference from a chief fire officer from Sweden, and it was very impressive, the extent to which firefighters are part of the whole population, civil defence, civil resilience there. I think if that is the direction, and I believe it will be the direction that we move in, then it is absolutely vital that we maintain the on-call RDS system, because those are the people that are embedded in our communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, it was quite sobering, the information presented from the Chief Fire the Stockholm area, when he quoted one of the politicians saying that we're not at war, but we're not at peace. And I think within the UK, sadly, we can sort of identify with that at the moment. Any other questions or comments from members? No. In that case, can I ask that you approve the recommendations? Can I recommend somebody propose? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Gareth. Will you show that you agree? Diolch yn fawr. So we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the annual pay policy statement for 2026-27, and it's over to ACFO Helen MacArthur. Diolch, Helen.
Diolch. I'm presenting the authority's pay policy for 2026-27. This is a report that we produce on an annual basis, and it's a statutory requirement under the Localism Act of 2011. The policy sets out how we determine pay across the organisation, with a particular emphasis on senior roles and our lowest paid staff. The draft that's on the agenda today is consistent with previous years and also aligns with the Welsh Government guidance on pay accountability. In terms of key messages, it's important that the policy continues to give assurance that our approach to pay is transparent and compliant with all relevant legislation, including the Equality and Employment Law. It also confirms that all salaries remained aligned to the nationally agreed frameworks. That is, that pay is not negotiated locally, it's negotiated at a national level. By way of assurance to members, there are no bonuses or performance-related pay schemes and no additional enhancements for chief officers outside of normal conditions. Any severance or exit arrangements for any senior roles continue to require member approval, and certainly there haven't been any in recent years. The policy also explains how we maintain the relationship between senior pay and the wider workforce. And for the forthcoming year, the multiple between the chief fire officer and the lowest paid employee is a ratio of 1 to 6.27. And the ratio of the median pay is 1 to 4.19. And both of these ratios are well within the expectations set out in the national guidance and also the Hutton Review. The statement also highlights the range of support measures that are in place for all staff, and this includes cycle to work, access to the blue light card, an employee assistance programme, occupational health and physiotherapy, and counselling services. Within the report, the current assurance is that we pay above the national living wage, and I'm really pleased to be able to report that since the report was drafted, we've received accreditation in respect of being a real living wage employer, which is something that we've worked hard to achieve. In terms of a forward look, the national pay negotiations for 2026-7 have not yet concluded for any of the staff groups. They remain open and ongoing, and once they have been finalised, they will be incorporated into this report and the report updated. I'd like to thank colleagues involved in compiling the policy and ensuring that our pay arrangements remain robust and transparent. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. So over to members for questions or comments, please. Councillor Anthony Wren. Anthony?
Thank you, Chair. Just recently we also had the gender pay gap report. So my question, which I should have put actually on that particular report at that time, but essentially a firefighter of exactly the same experience, be they male or female, they are paid exactly the same. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. We do not make any distinction in terms of pay scales or grades.
Again, then to follow up from that, the reason why the pay gender gap comes up with a gap is purely because there are different numbers of male and female employees, which is always going to not make a perfect balance.
That's correct, especially if we look at the operational firefighters, where historically sort of male colleagues firefighters were predominantly male, and as they've progressed through their careers, they've had pay awards. More recently, we've been able to attract females, but they're perhaps not in the same stage of their career. So over time, the gap will lessen. And certainly you see some areas within our workforce, especially in corporate services, where the pay gap is very narrow indeed, and indeed our own principal officer team as well.
Any other questions or comments? I can't see any hands being raised. No. Okay, so the report is just for noting and endorsing. Can I have somebody to propose, please? Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Gareth. Will you all show that you agree? Diolch yn fawr. Item number 9 is urgent matters. There aren't any urgent matters. So we go on to a part 2, item number 10, which is the role of the Treasurer. So we do need to agree that we will exclude the press and the public, not that they're watching, but we will be stopping the recording. So can I have somebody that we propose, please? Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Charlie. Will you all show that you agree? Diolch yn fawr. Lisa, can you confirm that recording has stopped, please?
I'm just in the process of dealing with it now.
So I thank Steve.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. And I think, Helen, you're going to introduce the item and then you'll be leaving, am I right?
Chair, I think David is going to introduce it, and then both David and myself will leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you. David, dros ydych chi, diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Cadeirydd.